Hi, it's Mary from Joyful and Mary Quilting. Welcome to our quilting tutorial on fabric markers. With new markers being introduced to quilters every single day, it really can be a challenge to find the best one for your project. Do the marks really disappear as promised? Or should you use water-soluble or disappearing ink or heat-erasable or chalk? Or even just a plain old mechanical pencil. It's so hard to tell. So today, we are going to put several markers to the test to see which ones truly stand out. Let's see if we can discover the ultimate marking tool for quilters. There really are many markers that are out on the market that say that they're good for quilting or just marking on fabric, and we just aren't sure. We don't know if that's really the truth. So I'm going to talk about the 5 that I've used most often, and I'm going to test each one of these for ease in removing them and writing on fabric. How well do they actually work? As a side note, keep in mind that depending on the fabric that you use, the more porous the fabric, in other words, the looser the weave, the easier it is for the ink in the marker to go through to the other side. So if you are marking on the wrong side of your fabric and you have a very porous fabric, there's a chance those marks could show up on the right side of the fabric, depending on how you use them, how hard you write, all sorts of variables that come into play when we're using our markers. So let's talk about those. So I'm going to take all of these markers and this little grid that I made with different fabric colors. We're going to test them out. We're going to see which ones really do work, whether or not they're worth the price, whether or not they really are worth marking on our quilt. We just don't know, and we don't want to ruin a quilt top by using a marker that doesn't work for the project that we are actually working on. Okay, so let's test and see. I'm just going to go in order of what I have here. I'm going to mark it on my grid, and we're going to see how they work. So we're just going to try them all out, test them and see if they do what they say they were going to do. Now the first one that I'm really not going to do anything with other than talk about it is my mechanical pencil. This is my 0.7 millimeter. It doesn't break. Sometimes if we get them and they're too thin, the lead will break as we're trying to draw on fabric. The 0.7 millimeter works pretty well. I use this all the time. I would never use it on the top of the fabric simply because it shows and it doesn't come off. There is no washing this out. There is no erasing it. It stays permanently. So I'm very careful that when I use the pencil, the actual pencil, I put it in a place where it's not going to show. So that's one way we can mark our quilts, and I use it all the time. The second thing is a chalk marker. Now there are many chalk pencils that are available. Different companies make them. I've heard that some do not wash out and can ruin a quilt top if we use them. I have not tried them, but I would encourage you, if you're going to use a chalk pencil of any kind, you test it first on a scrap piece of fabric just to make sure it's going to come out. You don't want something that's going to go on there that you think is not permanent, and it is permanent. Now this actually is a dusting of chalk. So when I use this, I've got this black fabric that I'm going to mark on, and as you can see from this, it has like a rounded tip on it. The rounded tip actually is a wheel, and it allows me to make a mark on my fabric, and on black or a dark fabric it works really well. And what I would do is just draw my line just like that. You can see the chalk comes out. It's a little dusty because it does have chalk in here. You can refill the chalk. It comes in different colors, but it works really well and it does come off. If I am going to remove this, I can just wipe it off. Eventually, especially with washing, it will come off. But it will also come off when I'm quilting. So if I do a large area, eventually it can either come off or the chalk can spread and you're not going to be able to see those lines very well. You can see just right now where I just lightly used my finger on this line, it's pretty much gone. So you want to be careful if you're using the chalk that you use it in an area that you're going to mark it and sew it and you're done with it. So you don't have that dusting moving all over your square and the line is still visible. Still a good product, especially if you're using it on dark fabric because it's so hard to see, and it comes off easily. So that's that. So now I'm going to show you something that I had no idea was going to happen, but when I tested it out, this is what happened. We have our 2 water-soluble and disappearing ink pens, and I'm going to mark on this yellow square with all three, and I'm going to tell you which ones I use so you know. This is the pen, this water-soluble pen that I've seen forever and ever. I used this many years ago when I was hand quilting a quilt. I actually marked the quilt pattern on the top, and then you squirt it with water or you wash it or whatever, and it goes away, which is what I thought was going to happen. But since I was hand quilting it, it took me a lot longer than I anticipated. So I was probably over a period of several months, I put the quilt away, it wasn't completely done, and then I got it back out again. The blue markings were gone. I didn't put any water on them, but a yellow stain was left on the fabric where I had put the pattern. It wasn't really dark, but it was enough that I could see it and I didn't like it. I tried everything to get it out. I tried to use stain remover, I washed it, I put soap on it, I did everything I thought I could, but it did not work. The stain stayed there. I ended up quilting over the top of it, and it didn't show a lot, but I knew it was there, and I was a little disappointed with that. So you have to be careful when you put something like this on your fabric, because you're marking a solution of some sort on there, and even though it said that it was going to come off with water, it came off just with time and it left a residue. So I'm going to mark with this one. This is a two-sided pen, and this is the same thing on this end of it. It's just a different brand. And then on this side, the purple side, it says disappearing ink. So this actually disappears in time. What I found with this was that unless I was going to mark an area and sew quickly, it disappeared. I could barely, as I finished marking a small quilt square, I was already losing the ink on this as I was doing that. So this just disappears without anything other than air. So let's first test these two markers, and I'm just going to draw a squiggly line on here. These are the water-soluble. So the top one here is a particular brand. It says actually on it, be sure to test it on a scrap piece of fabric before you use it. It's written right on the pen. And then here's the Mark Be Gone. So I'm going to mark that one also second. It's a little bit lighter, it looks like. Then the disappearing pen is the one, like I said, disappears after a while. And this is a very dark purple. So I'm not going to do anything with that. I'm going to try and not press that. We're just going to leave that, see what happens with that one. But I'm going to spray the other two just really close and see if they come off. Okay. So there we go. You can see that spraying that with water, it really did remove the blue disappearing pen, the water-soluble pen. So we can see that happen. This one is still there. So actually, the disappearing ink is doing pretty well. It's staying on here, hopefully a little bit longer. The other one that I had was a pink one, and that one did disappear really fast. But I'm hoping that this one stays on a little bit longer. Who knows? Now I'm going to iron this just because I want to see what happens if I press it after I have sprayed it with water, just so that I can dry it. So I'm going to place my iron on the top just for a little bit and see what happens. And this is the crazy part. Look at that. It came back. The blue came back. The more I hold it on there, the darker it's getting. I've got both of them. This one and this one have both returned to my fabric after I pressed it. It's still damp, so I'm not sure what will happen after a time. I don't like that. I don't like that it returned even though it said it was going to disappear with water. Keep that in mind when you are marking your quilt. If you wash your quilt and then dry it in a dryer, there's a good chance, depending on the heat, those marks may return, and you're going to end up ironing the rest of your quilt to try and remove them. I don't like that. The disappearing is disappearing a little bit. It's getting a little bit lighter, but not a lot. So it seems to be working okay. But I'm a little scared. I'm scared that it might do the same thing as this one once it goes away. So I'm just going to set this aside. That's the water-solubles. Now we have another set of pens here that I bought, that these were recommended to me. Actually, there's two brands. This one is the Madame Sew brand, and it comes with 4 pens with cartridges, 4 replaceable cartridges. So you have these pens, the shell basically, and then you can replace the cartridges as you run out. From what I understand, the ink does go rather quickly, that it takes a lot of ink in order to mark an entire quilt. But this is what this is now. These cost me about $16 for the 4 pens and the refills. I was also able to find the very same, they look exactly the same, pens from a company called Janyun, and it came with 48 refills and the shells. They don't look any different at all. $6.97, I think it was. A lot more inexpensive than the Madame Sew. I don't know why they're so much cheaper, but I tried them both. I didn't see a difference. They don't look different to me, and they didn't really mark any differently. So I'm going to show you these and show you what happened with this. This is really interesting. So I created this little grid, and I want to try the other pens that I have just to see how they work on the different colored fabric. Now also keep in mind, if you are using a fabric that has a print on it, it's going to be harder to see no matter what. The solids, it's a lot easier to see, but we're doing that for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to take my markers. These are those Madame Sew markers. And I am going to use the dark one first of all. And I'm just going to mark a line on here. I'm going to just do a little curly line. There. So I've marked it on here. Now, the basic reason we have all these different colors is so that we can use them on different fabrics. The red we can probably put on the purple maybe. So we'll try here. Yep, that works okay. Let's take the blue. We'll put it on the orange. Just so that we get a mark. It doesn't necessarily mean we want blue. We just want it to show up. And then we have the white. From what I understand with the white, it doesn't show up right away. It says be patient. And I have found that to be true. So we're going to try that over here on the black, and you can see it's very hard to see, but it's appearing. Do you see how it's showing up now? We can try that on the green as well and just watch it and see if it shows up on the green. I don't know if it makes a difference on what colors we use. We'll try it on the red. There's the red. I don't really see it much on the green. Let's try it on the blue. Oh yeah, it's coming on the green now. I can sort of see it. Can't really see it on the blue, but I'm guessing it probably will come. If we use on this particular one, we're going to save these for another pen. But as you can see, we have the lines will show up on here, and then these are actually heat erasable. So what they tell you is that you place your iron again on these and they will disappear. I'm really skeptical after what happened with our other pen. But let's see. I'm going to place this on here. And as you can see, yep, they did disappear. But if you take a look closely, and I don't know if you can see it easily on the camera, look at this ghosting right here. We can see this easily. The black pen has returned. It is not a black line, but rather it's just a mark that you can see. It looks almost like a gray line of some sort. Now, I don't see it on these yet, but I've got the lights shining down on here. What I did notice was that some of them do reappear. Here, oh, here it comes. I can see it right here on the blue. It's showing back up. So this doesn't happen immediately. Oh, now I can see it on the green. It's showing up on the green here. So again, we have to be careful. Now, the video that I watched that talked about ghosting said if you do notice this type of thing happening, you need to take and wash it under the faucet with some mild soap. Okay, first of all, my first thought is I don't want to. I mean, I want something that's just going to come off. If I've got to go through all this work afterwards, I don't feel like I want to do that, not knowing for sure if this is going to protect my quilt. This is really dark. This ghosting is really dark. So I want to show you what I did. I actually had two squares that I did by themselves. This was the ghosting, just like you can see on here, and you just saw me do it on here. Well, this is one that I just did before. This was the ghosting before washing. This is after washing. It's still here. It's a little bit lighter, and I washed it. I mean, I washed it. I used soap on it. I scrubbed it. I did the best that I could to try and get it off after washing. It's still there. So again, you got to be really careful where you're marking with this. Does that mean that this is a bad pen? No, it doesn't mean that it's a bad pen. It just means that you have to be careful that you don't mark it in a place where it's not going to come off and it's going to show. If you're using this to mark seam allowances or lines, obviously it's pretty good. If we're going to use on a black square, if we're going to use this white marking, I think it's a good thing. We can mark those lines when we're cutting, when we're doing our seam lines, and we know they're going to go away and they're not going to show. So I don't think the ghosting is a huge issue on that. But I think it is an issue if we are actually marking on a piece of fabric where it's going to show afterwards. And what if you make a little mistake, or maybe you sew off the line? Then you're going to see these lines, and I don't like that. The other issue I heard about, people have said, this pen, the Frixion pen, all those different pens that actually are the gel consistency, I don't know about the highlighters or the markers, but I know these for sure. They said that they can come back again when it is exposed to any kind of cold. So I did that. I marked on all of my squares, and then I put them in the freezer. Then I took them out of the freezer, and look what happened. This I actually marked with the white. This one I marked with the red. This one I marked with the blue, and this one I marked with the black. The white didn't come back when I put it in the freezer. It actually is gone, so I think that's probably pretty safe. The red came back. This is obviously back. The blue came back, again, obviously back, and the white with the black marker really showed that marking line. Will we ever have a quilt that's exposed to 0 degrees? Well, maybe. What if we took it someplace and wrapped up in it at a ball game and it was cold? And maybe even above, they say below 20 degrees, you can have an issue with that. And here in the Midwest, 20 degrees happens all the time in the winter. So if you take that out and all of your lines reappear on your quilt, what does that tell you? If that happens, you got to iron that whole quilt to get those marks out again. And then maybe they'll reappear when you put it in the dryer. I don't know. So for me, if I'm going to mark and I'm going to use any kind of a marking pencil, I am not going to use a marking pencil that could come back. And this is my test, and my test says no. You may have another opinion on this. You may have used it and it had no issues. You may live in an area where you will never either expose it to high heat or low temperatures, and you're probably good to go. But for me, this was important enough that I don't want to do that. I don't know where my quilt is going to end up. I don't know if somebody else is going to use this quilt and take it to a different area, and all of a sudden all these black marks show up on their quilt and they don't know what to do with it. We just need to be careful how we mark our quilt. I'm going to show you one more pen, and that's my Sewline pen. I love this pen. This is actually a ceramic pencil lead that's in it. It comes in several colors: white, pink, red, black, green. You can replace the leads. What I like about this is you pick your 3 favorite, and then you dial it to the color that you want depending on the fabric that you're marking. So one of the things that the Sewline people say is that you can actually erase the markings using their little eraser. Okay, I thought it sounded too good to be true. So I tested it out, and I'm just going to show you on here. I'm going to actually use the dark one so it shows up. But if I mark this, I'm going to mark this line. It's a pencil line. It's not super dark. Now, it's also erasable with water. So you can squirt water on it. It says it's water soluble. But it also says you can erase it with the pencil. So I took this off, and I tried to erase it. A lot of the eraser came off as I was doing this one little mark. So there's no way you could erase a whole quilt. I'm trying to get it, I'm doing all different directions just so I get into all those fibers. And, you know, it looks about like the ghosting looks on the other one. I'm not impressed. I did read a couple more reviews. Other people that have tested it out, they had the same experience. They didn't feel like the eraser worked. So then I thought, okay, we got part of it off. Let's see if we spray it. And I'm going to put another mark on there just so we can see, we can compare. I'm going to do that mark. I'm going to use the pink mark. And I'm going to use the white mark. Use that over here. So there's those. Let's just squirt them with water and see what happens. Watching it, I don't see anything happening. Now the white is gone. It looks like it has disappeared. I'm going to use my, no, it's still there a little. Well, I think it's going away. Yeah, the white looks like it's going away. So that one looks good. Let's see if we wipe this one, if it works. The pink looks like it's disappeared. I don't know about the black though. I just don't, I still see it there. I don't see the pink. I don't see the white. But I would think that if I'm using this particular pen, yeah, it's still there. I would be really careful that I marked it with an appropriate color. So maybe don't use black on white. Maybe use the pink on the white, the green, something that's a little bit lighter that will come out. Again, test it on your fabrics before you use it. I really like this pen for marking, all sorts of things, but I am very careful when I'm going to mark my quilts that I don't mark them in an area that if it doesn't come off, it's going to show. If I'm going to use anything to mark, I'm going to use masking tape, I'm going to use washi tape, or I am going to use my Hera marker to mark my quilting designs. Other things that you can do, there are papers that you can place over your quilt block and draw the design on there, sew onto that if you're doing machine quilting, and then rip the paper off. There are other ways that we can do that without actually risking our quilt by marking directly on it with a pencil that may or may not come out. We just don't know. Testing is really key when it comes to this. So there you have it. I really enjoy marking beautiful designs on my quilts, but not to the point that I'm willing to risk my quilt. You need to test it, make sure that whatever you use works on the fabric that you are using, and there you have it. I'm always trying to be joyful, but I will always be merry. Thank you so much for joining me.